Hello, and welcome to the podcast about Transformers comics, toys, and everything in between. I'm Ox Prime with my two co-hosts here,
Hi, I'm Computron.
Hi, I'm Kilobyte.
and today we are here with our special guests
I'm Els.
Specs.
from the Afterspark podcast. Awesome, thank you guys for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Moving on with our comic book discussion for today's episode takes us to IDW Transformers Back to the Future crossover. And spoiler warning out there for those of you who have not read it. So we highly recommend you go read it and then come back listen to the podcast. Alright, let's get to it. Computron, do you mind giving us the fun facts? And Kilobyte, do you mind giving us the trivia?
For the facts, there are a total of 4 comics. The first issue was released October 7th, 2020, while the fourth issue was released June 23rd, 2021. The writer for these comics was Kevin Scott, and the artists were Juan Samu, and colors by David Garcia Cruz and Candice Han. Okay, so trivia. In issue 1,
Computron.
It's me.
Kilo's doing the trivia.
Yeah, it's me.
hey man, that's my habit.
I know it's
alright?
usually still.
I
What a roll!
gotta take it all. Okay, so now time for trivia. In issue 1, catchphrases abound. Marty describes the New Hill Valley as heavy. Biff Tannen calls Marty a butthead, while his own "Hello, think McFly, think" routine gets turned back on him by Starscream. And it's Gigawatt who gets to sling Doc's famous exclamation, "Great Scott!" Rumble compares the parking lot battle to the gladiator pits back home, referencing the gladiatorial blood sports that have become a key part of Megatron's backstory in the last decade. Indeed, Rumble and Frenzy took part in these underground fights in the IDW Publishing's Megatron Origin comics. On page 7, issue 1, Optimus is missing his horns. Marty's escape from Starscream homage the chase scene in the first Back to the Future film, where he escapes from the teenage Biff and his gang. Just like in that movie, Marty makes his getaway on a skateboard and hitches a ride on a passing truck. The chase ends when Gigawatt's arrival sends Starscream flying into an abandoned fertilizer building, continuing a running gag from the movies where the film's antagonist, Biff Tannen, in the first two, his great-grandfather, Buford, in the third, gets covered in manure. In issue 3, Marty compares shooting the Constructicons to Wild Gunmen, a video game he briefly played in Back to the Future Part 2. In issue 4, whether as a result of IDW's ongoing scheduling problems or some kind of time travel misshape, the grand finale arrives a whooping 5 months late, 3 months after its already delayed third issue, with an average of 3 months between each issue.
Oh, man.
This lends the series the inglorious reward of quite possibly the most delayed Transformers comic ever. Rough. And finally, usually Gigawatt's license plate is not the same as the out-of-time plate that appears in the film and on his toy. It's instead a made-up plate that reads Gigs.
Fantastic. A lot of trivia in this one.
Just had a giggle.
All I can think is like his work name tag that becomes his license plate or something.
Right?
Oh, that's fun.
It's awesome.
Now, Al, Specs, do you guys mind giving us a quick summary of the comics to the listeners?
Sure. So we open at the end of the first movie, only this time with Rumble and Ravage watching both as Marty disappears into the past and when he arrives back in the present.
Upon realizing that there is a time machine, Megatron orders Rumble to obtain it.
Rumble and Ravage track Doc and Marty to the McFly residence where Doc is dropping off Marty before absconding into the future in the start of the second movie.
The two Conceticons have an altercation with Bumblebee that results in Ravage's early demise and Rumble getting injured.
Rumble, however, manages to escape to the future with Doc Brown stowing away on the time machine in his cassette form.
Rumble eventually steals the time machine himself and travels back to the past in order to prevent the Autobots from waking up.
Then, Marty McFly wakes to a very different world than the one he went to sleep in.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. What a way to get thrown into these comics. It feels very whiplash. And the first things I want to take note is there's a lot of heavy influences from the Back into the Future movies with like one small tiny change. Robots. Also, poor Ravage during the first couple pages.
I know, every time. Every time.
Just what a way to go.
I saw that panel and
boy.
I was thinking of Computron. I'm like, he must be very sad.
Oh boy. Just gets ran over. My boy.
And I'm also a huge fan of Starscream taking up Biff's lines from the movies. Like it's very
That was
suiting.
that was
I
great.
think
So
it's very
good.
perfect. I feel like if Transformers, if you switch the characters instead of like being humans, it was always Transformers. I would think Starscream would always be Biff, and that's it. Like if there were no humans involved and it was Transformers just going back in time and replaying the whole movie, but with Transformers, it's the perfect Transformer to have.
So, are there any Back to the Future fans here?
I love Back to the Future. It's one of the movies, like the movie series, kind of along with Ghostbusters, that I grew up watching a lot of. Although weirdly enough, we never owned a copy of the second movie. So I'm like very, very familiar with the first and third.
Don't worry about the second one. You're fun.
I mean, it is still fun, but yeah, I do think my favorite is probably still the first one.
I think I've only seen the first one.
I hadn't seen any of them until Al showed them to me. And that was-
Disappointed.
Oh
It
no.
took a long time. We got like midway through the second one and then had, I don't know, stuff came up and I didn't see the third one for like a few years.
Yeah, that's
I think we
fair.
finished it eventually.
What are your thoughts on Gigawatt, like his design and his overall personality?
Like him. Are you asking anyone in particular?
Just everyone in general.
I like his background. I like it was a little unique, but to me, kind of like a generic personality. I'm sorry.
That's fair. I'm really fond of like defecting characters, especially from like evil factions. And I don't feel like we get a ton of them. At least not ones that stick.
Yeah,
in the case
right,
of like
exactly.
G1. And I do wish maybe they'd been able to develop his personality a little bit better. I liked what I saw, but I do agree that like while being in the story wasn't so much the main focus in kind of the same way as with some of the other comics, I think it really was a lot more, it felt like Marty's story more so because it was more
Yeah.
focused on Marty.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I like his design. I know that they took the DeLorean from the movie and made it into a Transformer. So I feel like they did capture the true design of the vehicle in the movie, but then gave it the twist and like how it transforms and how it all bends and everything. I feel like it's very, very good, and like you can see the details with the flux capacitor and all of that. And I do like his eyes because they look like the welding goggles. It's my favorite part.
He has very expressive eyes.
Yes.
But at some point, Marty ends up going to 2015. A much simpler time. But not in this reality. We get some rough looking Autobots. What are our thoughts about this situation and this scenario?
Just the one where B had an eye patch,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
and then he suddenly didn't
Sounds
have
like
an
a
eye
bad,
patch.
like, alternate future thing.
Right? And then Rodimus is there, right?
Yep.
And he had like Optimus's personality, which was kind
A
of
little bit.
I like the design. I like the damage on them and like B with the eye patch and like you can still see chunks
It was
missing.
like one panel with the eye patch, though, right? Just
I think so. I think they forgot to
Yeah,
do it
there's
again.
a few errors in this one, but that's okay. Makes it funnier. I think one of my favorite things about this comic is that we find out Rumble is kind of the mastermind behind everything, in the sense that like he's the one that goes back in time and causes, the Decepticon uprising. But also because he goes back in time, there's two of them, and I feel like this comic didn't want to deal with the paradox situation, so they killed off one of them.
Yes, almost immediately.
the one from the future.
They're like, "Oh, there's two of us. How are we gonna tell each other apart?" And like Megatron's like, "Blam."
Murder.
I do what I want.
Problem solved.
Yeah. I laughed at that scene.
So good.
It's like Rumble. No, man. Keep your head down. He's like, oh, he's become too smart. Better kill him first. I'm like, oh, lordy.
Yeah.
He just painted himself blue. I am happy to see Flame War in this comic. I've noticed she's been popping up in more and more comics and media lately, which is cool.
Thank goodness I haven't seen her in anything else. Actually, this is the first time I've seen Flame War in a comic.
Even though her role's like very minor in this one, it was great like seeing her as the background.
Yeah. That was very fun.
What's her thoughts on Megatron?
The cape doesn't suit him.
The cape? You don't like the cape?
No, it looks.
Is it made out of plastic, basically, or how many small mammals did they kill for this?
No one make a try. I'd probably kill all those mammals.
Yes, but keeping them intact enough to skin them and then having,
Yeah.
I don't know, skilled furriers in order to actually make a cape big enough for him.
Now I'm just imagining, like, he sent Rumble and Frenzy out with, like, I don't know, clubs, and they're just clubbing all these small mammals to death, and that's how they got them all.
Yeah, I was thinking like either that or like he made the humans do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. And one of the themes I noticed in this comic, at least the first one, was like, okay, that's cool, is the skateboard is a transformer and their name is Skills. And I was like,
Walker just clocked him.
Back to the future, time travel, bringing everyone back to life. Considering there were so many deaths and so many, just let's bring everyone back
So,
Right.
in the 80s
like
comics.
with this perspective of the murders, Doc Brown is a psychopath. He killed the most out of everybody.
It gave me Rick and Morty vibe, and I know Rick and Morty is based on Back to the Future, but like Doc
Yeah.
felt very like bloodthirsty. I'm like, this just feels very Rick like.
Unhinged. A very unhinged Doc Brown.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you would think, because Back to the Future doesn't really have, like, they really only have kind of the one big death, not death thing, I feel like, which is at the end of the second movie and kind of the arc of the third movie in a lot of ways. So, yeah, it was weird. Like, you don't really expect a lot of deaths here. It is not a movie series with a high kill count.
no, it's not.
No.
Which is why I did not expect any of it when it like appeared on the page.
Yeah. I saw them and I'm like, okay, they're offline. But since I knew they had the power to try time travel, I'm like, they're just gonna fix it. Everybody's gonna come back. So I'm not too scared.
I do enjoy Rodimus's death. I really enjoyed it. I'm being sarcastic. He got
Another-
squished
I mean,
like a bug.
He stayed around longer than Ravage did.
This is true.
My favorite characters almost always die, and this is like a running gag with my husband at this point. Like, oh, you like that character? They're gonna die. And I'm like, probably.
Oh man, you and Kilo, we've been reading the 2005 continuity. He's like, this character's really cool, and then the
Oh, no.
next issue, they die.
Yep, that's exactly the same thing that's been happening to me. Like, we read the ROM versus Transformers, and they have a minicon in there. I'm like, a minicon, yes, I know that bot. And then they died in the next panel, and I'm like, no.
But bringing us back on topic, and this is a time travel thing, but there's a lot of time traveling happening at the end. I might have gotten confused. Does anyone want to try to explain what kind of happens there at the end?
I can try.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so they get the time machine, Gigawatt, working again. They go back to the 80s to stop Rumble from waking up the cons and killing all the Autobots. So they fix that, and then, if memory serves, basically, they use the time machine to go back, or go to... I can't remember if they go to the present first, and then the future, if they go to the future and then the present. But essentially, we get, to find out what happened with the Autobots after all this. And Gigawatt's okay, and Biff is now their mechanic for some reason. Fine, I guess. I'm like, not what I would have gone with, but alright. I guess he does know about Energon after having to work for Rumble for so long. And then, basically, I know it ends with the present and Marty driving the truck.
Yep. I think that's spot on.
I have a question because it kind of threw me off a little bit. So you remember when Rumble came in to wake up the Decepticons? And so he wakes up the Decepticons, and Decepticons go over to kill the Autobots because the Autobots were still like taken apart. So my question was, were both the Autobots and Decepticons in the same building?
Yes, because they were on the Ark when it crashed, and the Nemesis, or whatever the Decepticon ship is called, landed in, like, South America. If they're going with the same continuity from the comic, or the cartoons.
Right.
Yeah,
it seems
which
like
would-
that's the route they're going for.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my assumption. That's the only, I think, origin I'm aware of where they both crashed on the Ark, unless the Marvel Comics did it too, which it might have.
I'm pretty sure they both crashed on the Ark, because the Decepticons boarded and the Decepticon ship ended up somewhere else, and I think the Insecticons ended up in an escape pod, and then they ended up in Bali.
I ended up a lot of places.
Though I don't remember, it's been a long time since I've read the Marvel comics.
So my last note is I want to talk about the ending teaser with Barney's new truck. The one that's the Decepticon, and it feels like
Yeah.
they're trying to hint at for a sequel. With the amount of delays this one got, and current world environment, I don't think that's gonna happen. What are your thoughts?
Well, I
Especially
mean,
not with. Go ahead.
yeah, they're losing the license, aren't they? I think
Yeah,
that's what Alice was gonna say.
right.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't even think they have time to come out with a sequel, which is very disappointing, actually. I would have loved a sequel.
Maybe if they go back to the future, they can do that.
I was gonna say, given the exponential curve, I think we got about 5 years.
There any other notes? Does anyone want to talk about anything else? I know we did a bunch of jumping back and forth, but I'm cool if we want to keep going back and forth. I mean, this is Back to the Future after all.
Soundwave was only in there for like a page.
Yeah, big
Treason,
sad.
I tell you.
His boy got more screen time than he did.
His two boys.
Just two boys, yeah.
Man.
One of whom, well, technically three of them, considering there's 2 Rumbles at one point.
Right?
Oh, true. Except for one of them also got ran over and
Yeah.
was apparently a fragile tape.
Like,
Gosh.
Soundwave didn't get to be in there very much, and his babies got killed. I'm like, what the heck? Stop it!
I do like that they put in a little Easter egg with Spike's suit from the G1 cartoon, and they gave it to Biff.
Was funny.
I thought that was a pretty cool nod.
Yeah, that was interesting. Like, I wonder if the Decepticons found that technology or they reinvented it through this alternative reality. It's interesting.
Yeah. Skills being the second skateboard transformer, considering Grinder in Armada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish they would have, with the toy of Gigawatt, I wish they would have put skills in there like a mini-con. That would have been cool.
Would have been cool.
That would have been neat.
That would have been awesome.
I do like the symbol on his chest though. Like it was really cool.
The
Don't
flux
you,
capacitor?
Yeah. The flux capacitor. Don't you have gigs as a toy, Kilo?
I do, yes. Yes, I do. I got it as a gift from a friend. So, and I really like it. I was excited to read the comic just so I could know more about him.
Well, I'm about to get it as a gift from a friend.
I'm gonna lock my doors.
All right, well, if there are no more bullet points we want to talk about, let's talk about Rodstar rating. I'll go ahead and go first. I'll give this one probably a 3.5. I feel like it was good. It's very reminiscent of the Back into the Future, and I really like the art style of this one. Who would like to go next?
I can go next. I'll give it a 4. It had a blast, and I know there's a couple of loopholes and everything, but the art really was vibrant, and like I could see, like it made everything feel like alive and everything. And I really like gigs and skills.
Yeah, I'll bounce off of that. I really love the art. I really loved the plot. I love the plot. There were, like we said, a lot of loopholes, but I'm gonna kind of join with Onyx and say 3.5.
I'd say maybe 3 for me, because unfortunately Doc's crazy eyes or intense eyes are they're a lot.
The murder eyes.
Yeah.
Like, it works for Doc Brown, the Christopher Lloyd, right? The
Oh,
actor.
yeah.
But it's just with static art, it just doesn't work as well.
Looks like a serial killer.
It doesn't have the life that the actor brings to it. So yeah, the static serial killer eyes. I like how vibrant the Transformers are and expressive. It's a lot better than some of the art in the mainstream comics.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fair.
That's true.
Fair.
That is true.
So I'd probably give it a 4. I did like the art, and there's always kind of this fine line I feel like Transformers artists need to have of like the robots still having that kind of rigid structure, but still being able to be expressive. And I do feel like they handled that really well.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the humans were not drawn the best to echo specs. Doc Brown definitely had murder eyes. I don't think it bothered me quite as much, but yeah, it was definitely a thing that was in there. I liked all the characters. I know we talked about Gigawatt maybe didn't get as much development, but one of them we saw I did quite enjoy, and I thought, they did a good job staying in character with Marty and with Doc, even if that meant Marty was blindly charging off and doing really dumb things periodically. But
he's a 1980s protagonist.
I don't know what I expected. But yeah,
Leroy!
pretty much. I honestly am really sad that there's no way we're gonna get a sequel with IDW losing the license, because it's a really fun idea, and I think that there could be more that you could do with it from a storytelling perspective, and I'm sad we're not gonna get that.
Yeah, you could make at least 2 more sequels.
Yeah. Now I'm just imagining Autobots in the Old West.
Oh yeah, that's where my head went too. Like, are we gonna get a horse transformer?
No, you'd end up with locomotives.
Oh no, that's
It would be
train.
Hearts of Steel sequel.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
true.
that's what I was trying to remember.
They totally would turn that train into a transformer.
Yep.
They turned everything else into one.
Right?
Megatron is a period gun.
I like it.
What do you have the mass
now.
shifting or not?
It would have to go with yes.
Awesome. Als, Bex, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can listeners find you and listen to your podcast?
You can find us on Tumblr as Afterspark-podcast or on Twitter as AftersparkPod. There's a bunch of other places you can find us too by searching just Afterspark Podcast, like iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. You can also find more social media links and more places to find us on our Tumblr.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. And listeners, we'll put those in the details or on the screen, however you're listening to this. And if you've enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it with your friends and subscribing. We hope you all are staying safe out there. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Owls and Specs, for joining us today. Till all are one.
Till all
All
are
are
one.
one.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Swerve's Bar Podcast. You can also find us on Twitter at Swerve's Bar. If you are interested in more content, try checking out the spin-off D&D Transform and Rollout Rise of the World Killers. Let's tune in for a preview now.
She gives you a wink.
Will do. And I wink back. I'm gonna keep this pager so I can reach you quicker.
I was counting on that.
Good. I chuckle and I turn.
I ship it.
Now kiss.
Exhilarating. There is also a YouTube channel with bonus content. Link will be provided below. End transmission.